This, through our Lady and through our Lord we prevail. This video is to warn people. To warn people about some of the people. In the VA in general, but specifically, I'm speaking about the one that's in Saginaw, at the main Weiss complex. You have veterans scattered throughout the VA. Some are good disposition, some are bad. Um, some can be good, some can be malicious. And then you have civilians, the same thing. You also have some people who work there who, for whatever reason, they pick and choose which veterans they're really going to serve, and they pick and choose whether they're going to help that veteran or absolutely try to ruin them, especially when they know that there's a claim pending. Now, recently, even though originally I was asked, would you like the VA to have maybe your provider or another provider do some DBQs for you? I said, no, I want an impartial party. I didn't realize that CNP or somebody in CNP would weaponize the process. And I've had several contractors, and according to my claim letter, the decision, at least one or two of those, what do you call them, claims examiner, not the ratings examiner, the claim examiner. This is the person you go to see, and they do what's called the DBQ, which is Disability Benefits Questionnaire. At least one or two of them have made statements. I don't know those statements until I actually receive it through a FOIA request. It's the way the system's set up. And your FOIA request has to be approved first, but if it's disapproved, that would be partiality. But you're supposed to be able to get. It's about you. It doesn't matter if they paid the claims examiner. It's you. It's about you. Therefore, unless it has a clearance stamped on it, it's yours by a FOIA request. And but they've made statements that kind of ruined some of my claim. And apparently, either the claims examiner or the ratings examiner, they didn't look at all the evidence for a couple of issues. They whether they ignored it or they read over it and jumped ahead, or just chose to ignore it. That's why another video I talk about I was robbed of 30%. And others, instead of looking at the long picture of illnesses the past 10 years, about 10 years, at least almost every year, at least 1 to 2 bouts with severe sinusitis in an ER. And, that's documented. That doesn't include the times that we use traditional Filipino or Chinese medicine at home, which I do quite often. If I'm going to the ER or to urgent care, that means it's beyond traditional medicine's ability to deal with it. So I was robbed there, and and other issues robbed. So I had one provider that his problem was his staff. With his diagnosis, he's slow. I have other faults that I found with him, putting diagnosis in the system, documenting stuff, other than looking at the whole picture, making a diagnosis, but not documenting it. Or, letting nurses have way too much control over stuff. Or, let's see, he takes time to, put stuff in, but his diagnosis, several of them, they're right on. They're really right on. And a couple of them actually, taught me, because I knew a little bit about it. And so when he diagnosed me with it, and then I look back at all my issues, I'm like, yeah, he's right. I thought about it, but I didn't realize that is. Well, then sometimes you get providers that want to disprove that. And they'll say like, well, you can't just say it without documenting all the way to the point of saying it. Yeah, but when you're, obviously educated, or you do your research and you look at the big picture and you're like, oh, I see this. I think probably one of my doctors, I think he probably had a very good memory for research. So when he'd step back and look at the whole picture, he's like, this and this. Um, but then you have others that are like, well, I don't know, it's this. And you can tell their attitude is to disprove the other provider. And it's not about a peeing contest. It's about taking care of the veteran. And I've looked at this one doctor's diagnoses, and I've looked at the facts behind what those illnesses are. You know, even after I had glossed over articles about it, so I knew a little, but I read things more deeper, and I mean it makes sense. It really does. But when you get providers that the energy you're getting from them is to, I don't know, not to really help your claims at all, but maybe even a little bit of trying to get them debunked. Like it's some kind of a hoax. Um, it's kind of an energy. I mean, not without somebody directly saying it, but kind of like, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's somebody. The VA is not normally going to be supportive of an illness, especially one that's compensable and that's rateable, and that's going to require them to give you extra medical care. But then on the other hand, it's our right. And the Supreme Court has upheld that before. I know somebody from LinkedIn that actually the Supreme Court has said, hey, sorry, asthma attack today. Probably more bad one than I've had in a while. But um, well, anyway, so this veteran, he had to go to court, but they said they can have the police follow you around, the VA. They can have you check in. They can have the police go in and stand over you while you're getting an examination, but they can't take away your medical care. It's written right in federal law. You can't administratively remove a veteran's medical care. Then that becomes compensable financially, and we're talking about civil rights violations. Um, and like I said, this veteran that I mean, we haven't met formally, but I've replied a couple of times, and he's read some of my stuff, and but he has they just torment him, and he's also in the state of Michigan. They just torment him, and you look into his background. This is not somebody who's a nut. This is not somebody that picks fights. This is somebody that's calm and cool and bites his tongue. He's EOD. These are not people known. I've known lots of EOD guys, lots of special operations guys. These are not guys that just fly off the handle. So I believe he is being targeted. I don't know why, but then again, why is my family being targeted? Somebody put something on the web. I don't know. Some people got some money who are mad at me. I don't know. Companies mad about some bad attention. Um, Maybe, and they found some people that don't like me, especially a religious group that's very focused on race. Maybe, but I held people. I held people by the code. By a code of honor. I held them to it. And maybe they didn't like that. But anyway, so you may find that some providers are, not gonna be so supportive. They'll even tell you, "Oh, we're not supposed to do those claims. We can't do a DBQ." Yes, they can. Um, but I mean, if it's a legitimate condition, they have to. And I think the one doctor. That's why. the nurses were trying to keep me from going there. Because I think, because whether he likes me or not, whether I'm a thorn in his side or not, at least he was trying. But the problem is that he didn't want to go too far, and the nurses were always, blocking stuff. And even one nurse that started out to try to be helpful, in the end, I think it became a different nurse, honestly, because her intonation and the way she talked in messages, it changed. I think it's a different person. She took over somebody else's role in messaging people. That's what I think. But and then when you have CNP, whether locally or regionally, somebody in CNP, giving you contractors that threaten you, contractors that regardless whether they have evidence or not, the narrative they write makes it sound like it not military related at all. Um, Even if it's a presumptive condition, they can't do that. They did it to me. I've had presumptive conditions that are diagnosed, more than one, and they said, "Oh, this isn't military related." It's a presumptive condition, but it's a problem when you have a lot of issues. I know there's people out there who have worse than me. And I'm not going to get into a contest, another peeing contest. But I will say that regardless of where somebody served, what happened to them, what they were exposed to, what, how much fire they were under, how much exposure they had, we all served, and we all deserve the same treatment. People wounded in combat, yes, they deserve a higher echelon. The Purple Heart, what is it, the Purple Heart League or Purple Heart? I think it's the Purple Heart League. Anyway, yeah, they deserve a higher echelon of treatment. But people who've gotten exposure, even if it's just having sand blow in their face for 6 or 7 or 8 months, still, you know, depending where you are in the Middle East, um, that stuff's toxic. All the way from Saudi to Kuwait to Iraq, um, and as far as Kurdistan, the sand's toxic. You're just dealing with different toxicities. Yeah, there weren't oil fires in Kurdistan, but they sprayed sarin gas. Yeah, there wasn't sarin gas in southern Kuwait, but there was almost 300 oil wells burning all the way from the south, from near Kuwait City, all the way north to Bering. There were oil fires burning for 6 months. It's toxic. And just because somebody didn't have a burn pit behind their hooch doesn't mean they weren't exposed. And that's my disagreement with some of the research that DOD and the VA are putting out. I disagree. But I'm a nobody. But still, I guarantee you that if I had a voice, I could get a lot of other PhDs and grad students. They would, they would say he's right. Nobody can tell the long-term destructive effects of breathing desert sand in Kuwait, whether you're in Arifjan or you're in Kuwait Naval Base or you're up in Bering. It's toxic. If you're in Balad, toxic, more toxic, but still toxic. So that being said, and I think it was Anaconda. I think in Iraq, Anaconda was the one where the most burn pits were logged over a period of 20 years. I think it was Anaconda. But regardless, it's toxic. So just be careful of people, if people, providers, they're almost like trying to set you up. They're saying, oh, no, you got to go do this and meet with these people and these people. But read the energy. Is that person, trying to hook you up with people that are going to help you? Or are they going to try to hook you up with people that are going to try to sabotage your claim? My experience at the Saginaw VA, I don't trust anybody there. I have had so much stuff happen to me. So much stuff. I don't trust that VA at all. I don't like it. But, the situation is we can't go to another VA. I can't afford it to drive, even with a you know, transportation that's good on gas and easily access to buses and stuff like that. Um, I can't afford to go back and forth 2 or 3 days a week to another VA. So for now I'm stuck here, imprisoned medically too, in the county of Saginaw. So just be careful. Choose a VA. I'm not saying you want a doctor that's going to say yes to everything. Because if you're going to fake stuff, you're going to get found out. And it's better you be honest now. If something's mild, say, yeah, well, it's mild. Sometimes it's worse. Or say something that, even if it's embarrassing, yeah, I have a hard time peeing. I really do. Say it. Be honest. Because if you're going to lie and exaggerate, or even, well, if you're under describing something, how can I put it? Under going, how would I put that? Anyway, unrealistic severity, meaning it's worse, you're only undermining yourself. You're not, it's not just about the compensation. You're not going to get the medical care you deserve, which could mean something like chemo. Oh, well, we can't give you chemo, for this particular issue, for this organ. You're only rated at 30%. You know, there's going to be cost sharing and limits to the amount of chemo in your program. What are things worse than you're saying? Don't undermine yourself. Be honest. But you don't want a doctor that's going to say yes to everything. You want somebody that's going to look at the evidence and say, okay, let's document this without sabotaging you. Somebody, an honest, and you may find some, you may not. My experience, at least in the Saginaw VA, is providers are scared to help you too much because apparently they won't get brought back on contract. Um, and if they're a direct appointee, usually they're in urgent care. And my experience in urgent care, I mean, they're trying to replace some of the docs or add new ones. Um, there's one there, a new urgent care doc that I believe saved my life. She's the one that identified my um, the severity of a mass that I had, and she drained it, IND, and through normal, scientific investigation, found out that I was diabetic and that I was throwing ketones. That doctor saved my life. And not only was I throwing ketones, but I had been doing it for about 2 weeks. They were moderate ketones, but still, in that span of those 2 weeks, now I know why I lost 15 pounds. I was throwing ketones. Sadly, I gained back half of it, but still, she saved my life. Her and her team. But, just be careful, going there, because some of the urgent care doctors are, if you don't get that one doctor, I mean, I've only experienced, the ones that I knew from the past, they're all gone. It's completely different staff there, except for two of the urgent care doctors. They are horrible, horrible. They're deceptive. They don't tell the truth. They're immature, and they retaliate in the physician notes. It's like reading some high school drama book when you read some of the stuff they put in the physician notes. It's just horrible. Dealing with some very emotionally immature people, and emotionally immature people should not have a medical license. So, my opinion's known about those two physicians anyway. Many people know that. I'm very open and very honest and very direct about it. You know, when you have such power over another person, if you don't have a certain degree of maturity, you shouldn't be doing that. It's not just clergy, it's deeper. Predators aren't just in the church or a synagogue or a mosque. There's predators in social work agencies, predators in hospitals, medical clinics, schools. People got to open their mind. But that being said, just be careful. The VA you go to, and Saginaw VA, yeah, they need a real workover. Yeah, when I go in there now, I just wonder if it's anything related to my claim. Is somebody going to try to do something like later? Um, Not later, but earlier. Um, yeah, later on, I may regret this, but because somebody kind of tried to pigeonhole me because we're using recording software to dictate everything we said, and they're first of all they're error prone. I don't know if they're using any databases to supplement the spell check. It's not Dragon, but still, these are infant technologies, but they type what we say. And they said, "Oh, the VA uses it." No, the VA does not use it to record an entire clinic visit. No, they don't. But I gave permission anyway. I have nothing to hide. But when we're talking about some of my issues for my claim, my feeling was that it's kind of like the practitioner was kind of trying to disprove some of them. Like asking me really general questions, like how am I supposed to answer this? Um, so I just tried to answer as generally as I could, like where does your body hurt? I mean, it's I don't know. It's a pointless question. Oh, you want me to tell every single part where it hurts? Um, yeah, I don't know. My feeling was like trying to record me saying something, that would show I'm lying or something, or that my other doctor, his diagnoses are incorrect or something. I didn't, I didn't have a good feeling over the entire event. But anyway, trying to make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about too. Oh, where are these diagnoses? Where do you see them? They're in my medical record. Where in your medical record? In my medical record, where my problems are. Medical problems? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, but I'm tired of whatever malicious thing that people have planned. I don't know. So I'm trying to leave the VA. Whatever doctor I find, they're gonna make a lot of money. I'll probably need weekly or bi-weekly visits. Got a lot of stuff to do. Um, so they'll make a lot of money. Yeah, but I'm tired of people trying to sabotage my health, my claims. I'm sick of it. So be very careful if you're going to go to the VA. And if you're going to go to the Saginaw VA, Like I tell some of the people in this channel, I recommend recording them. But keep in mind, if they find it, they're going to threaten you and they may try to take it, which they can't. Yes, it's government property, but to take something from you, they need a warrant. They can't say, "Give me your wallet." No, they can't. Even on government property, you can't take personal property without a warrant. And, don't blame the VA police. You know, Sometimes, these guys and gals, they have no choice. They're at the mercy of a system that the very nature of the VA and the systems they create and their reporting systems, it fosters predators. They can weaponize anything. Oh no, we don't. You don't need 5 things of insulin. We recommend you go with 4 every month, and that's all you're going to get. They weaponize stuff. Well, I don't care if you had to buy one last month. We're telling you you only need 4. So I guess if you need another one, you're going to have to buy it yourself again. Or you keep coming here, for these sinus infections again and again and again. You have your medicine, so just tough it out. Just take your medication. You don't need to come here and we tell you to take your medicine every time, or we give you an antibiotic, stuff like that. They weaponize everything, at least at that VA, and I'm sick of it. You know, Told by one doctor, "Oh, why does he keep coming here for the same thing?" Or, I don't feel comfortable giving steroids to him. That's a serious thing. I think that his, whatever medical problem, I think it's in his head. Well, a medical procedure just proved that he's wrong. And all those times he denied steroids is probably the reason why the medical problem is. It sounds like some of it's permanent. So, telling me I come there for antibiotics and steroids all the time. What an idiot, really. Well, both of them. It's two. These are people that they live in their head how they want to treat people, and everything is about them. These are the kind of people. Yeah. I hate to use the word idiot, but when people are so cruel to people, you can't give them compassion because they're cruel to people. They're mean. They're bullies. Some people even Jesus didn't like. So, that being said, if people are repentant and they want to change and they say, "I'm sorry, the past 3 years, you're one of the patients I was really horrible to. I'm sorry. I was drinking then or something, or I was going through a very long divorce and it wore me out. Or, yeah, I was running 2 practices and I wasn't giving my patients what they deserve. Um, I gave you my time, I gave you good diagnosis, but as far as treating people with respect, I never did." Until you hear something like that, it's not nice to call people an idiot, but when people are like that, that's what people call them when the break room doors closed. So I'm just being honest. Actually, it would probably be a lot more colorful words starting with an A or a B when the break room doors closed. I'm just being honest. You know, we live in a civil world. I'm not saying I would say things like that, but I'm not perfect. I have regular confessions for a reason. But yeah, some people are just bad people. Anyway, just be careful if you go to that VA. It's my recommendation. Don't judge too quickly, but protect yourself. Because the ultimate thing in your mind to keep is It's not just about the money. That extra medical care is a big difference. I've heard of veterans with some of the same issues that I have. The VA buys them special bed covers, buys them air filters, buys them masks, helps them get special, equipment to clean their house. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So that rating matters to open up the funding so that they will get you that stuff. And I'm sure rating is somehow connected to the power chair. I don't know exactly what the system is. It seems to be down to one person if she likes you or not. At least in the Saginaw VA. But I'm sure if people are rated, that changes things too, because that opens up money, opens up more money. But just be careful, folks, so you don't get, sabotaged to get better care. Just because you've had things happen to you in service and after, as a result of service, and you're getting older, doesn't mean you should be disabled in a chair and you can't enjoy life, because you can. And it doesn't mean, while you're finding everything that's wrong with you and, learning your limitations, that you can't get compensation. There's a reason why this U.S. code is written as it is regarding us. And, there's also a thing when you feel like you're at your best medically and your provider's like, yep, this is where we want you. We know what your limitations are now. We know what will not be, healed, what can't get better, and we know what you can do with all of that. There's nothing wrong with you writing a letter to Washington to the VA and saying, I no longer wish to receive monetary compensation. I will retain my rating. There's a format for that, but people may say, "Are you crazy?" To somebody who says, "I don't want it." I mean, if you can live a good life and you've saved your money and you've been investing and planning, while your abilities are limited, then the time may come when you don't need all that money. Maybe you can give it to your kids for college. Yeah, I'm getting my disability now. It's going to be transferred to your bank account so you can pay for school. Um, stuff like that can be done, or you can stop it completely, saying I don't need it anymore. But I just want my rating. But anyway, there's a lot of options out there, but just protect yourself, because you will encounter some providers that just, and some staff that just weaponize everything. So be careful. Keep in mind, if you record, people may retaliate, but do it anyway. Just find a better way to record and protect yourself. Because now with the new software, you may be being recorded and you don't even know it, and it's typed up. I mean, yeah, mind you, we don't know the databases that this AI is pulling from for grammar and for vocab, but still, they may be recording us. I mean, at least at my clinic, they ask permission. I have nothing to hide, but it'd be interesting to see if they weaponize that visit.